I'm a girl of 16, yet people often think I am 18 or 19 years old. I don't mean to brag, but folks have said I'm quite pretty. With my long, light chestnut hair and large eyes that seem to catch everyone's gaze, I'm 5.5 feet tall and sport a full-figured shape. All right, time for the tale. I would rather not share my real name for my own private reasons. I reside in a region of Texas known as El Paso, and to put it mildly, this neighborhood isn't the safest. I was with my dad's second wife and my baby sister, who's just 1 year old, and my younger brother, who's 13. We were shopping because my dad wanted to add a new firearm to his collection. That particular day, I had on a white short top with a zipper, and it revealed a bit of cleavage. This becomes relevant soon. While my dad was discussing with the guy who was helping with the gun registration, I noticed he kept glancing my way. Let's just call him the eerie guy. This man was old, like really old, around 50 or so. When the eerie guy was requesting my dad for his identification and private details, I caught him continually peeking at my chest, and he wasn't very subtle about it. He knew exactly when to sneak a peek when my dad was distracted with the paperwork and such. My brother caught on to this and mouthed to me, "He keeps staring at you," nodding in the direction of the man. I nodded in return, acknowledging his observation. At this point, the man's staring became more frequent and bold. Whenever he got the chance, he'd openly ogle at me. I really couldn't understand what he was trying to accomplish. Even my brother started to feel uncomfortable with this man's behavior and tried his best to shield me from his gaze. And I know what you're wondering. Why didn't you let your parents know about it? Since my dad is quick to react and remind folks to mind their own business, and my dad's a tall, 6-foot Mexican gentleman who can give you goosebumps with a mere glance, I preferred to stay silent. So I made my way towards one of the aisles that would hide me completely from the eerie guy's sight. My brother joined me for support, as I was clearly distressed. After roughly 5 minutes, the eerie guy moved to the back to check on something. At this point, my nervousness was through the roof to such an extent that I was aimlessly wandering around the shop. My stepmother noticed our discomfort and asked if we were all right. I finally revealed to my mom and dad that the eerie guy was staring at me incessantly. My dad was upset, but he didn't want to show it openly, so he just joked, "He's probably just wondering how such a gorgeous being like you could be my kid," and then he smiled. It helped soothe my nerves a bit, so I smiled in return and gave him a hug. I noticed then that I was trembling, so I took a deep breath and returned to the aisle with my brother. Once my dad completed his dealings with the eerie guy, my brother mentioned he had to use the bathroom. So he and my dad went to take care of that, leaving my stepmother, my baby sister, and me waiting outside the restroom. My little sister was napping in her stroller by this point, and my stepmom was gently rocking her. But she positioned herself in a way where the eerie guy couldn't spot her from the counter. Then, after about 5 minutes, they still weren't out of the bathroom, so we continued to wait. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I saw the eerie guy approaching us. I simply stepped aside to let him pass. He came right towards me, then glanced over at my stepmother. The eerie guy seemed taken aback slightly, but he kept moving. A few minutes later, as we were leaving, I glanced back at the shop, and he was staring directly at me. I felt a slight chill but kept moving on. I tried to convince myself that he was simply heading to the restroom, but why did he seem surprised upon seeing my stepmom? I know this story might not seem too frightening to many of you, but when you're unsure of another person's motives, it can be terrifying. So, always stay alert and safe, folks, and always keep an eye on your surroundings. And as for that eerie guy in the store, get lost and find someone your own age. It was a very dark and stormy night, with the wind howling and rain lashing against the windows. Inside the house, the eerie atmosphere added to the sense of unease as a tree branch tapped ominously on the top floor window. As the young narrator lay in bed downstairs trying to fall asleep, the noises outside intensified, almost drowning out the sound of their own heartbeat. Suddenly, amidst the storm's chaos, A loud engine-like noise pierced the air, causing the narrator to snap awake. The noise grew louder, resembling the rumble of a massive diesel truck passing by. The strange sounds were further accompanied by the distinct slam of a car door. The young observer couldn't resist the urge to investigate, and through the window they saw a car's headlights illuminating the darkness some distance away. Voices reached their ears, and the emotions conveyed were unsettling. The sound of a scared and crying woman, and a man filled with anger and aggression. Fear gripped the narrator's heart as the man's threatening words reached them. The woman desperately tried to correct him, stating that this was not the intended target. Instead, the correct house was numbered 1133, while they were at 1113. The man's fury was evident, but they eventually left in the car, driving away from the scene. Shaken, the young observer waited anxiously for some time before mustering the courage to return to bed, hoping that it had all been a big mistake. However, the night's events were far from over. Later, the sound of police sirens filled the neighborhood, and the narrator's parents engaged in a serious conversation in the kitchen. The father mentioned hearing strange sounds and voices at the front door during the night, adding to the family's concern. Despite having witnessed the disturbing incident, the narrator chose not to reveal their experience to their parents, keeping the terrifying encounter to themselves. Subsequently, while watching the news, they were confronted with a chilling revelation: the true nature of the events that unfolded that night. The man the young observer had heard outside was an intruder, attempting to harm the owner of House 1133, suspecting an affair between his wife and the homeowner. Thankfully, the police apprehended him before any harm was done, but the discovery of weapons, ropes, and gasoline in his car highlighted the seriousness of the threat. The young narrator couldn't help but dwell on the what-ifs, realizing the peril they had unknowingly been in. Had the woman not corrected the man, they might have fallen victim to a sinister plan. The news report confirmed that it was not a bad dream or a figment of their imagination. It was a terrifying reality that would forever be etched in their memory. My name is Jeff, and I'm about to share a true tale from my past. This event involved not just me, but also my brother and our 3 cousins. It was a chilly night in November 1998 in Boston. I'll be referring to my brother as Tom and my 3 cousins as Rob, Jack, and the youngest one, Davy. Rob and Jack are brothers, and Davy is our youngest cousin, who at that time was an only child with no siblings. We were all about the same age, between 11 and 13 years old. We were hanging out at my Aunt Mary's house, who is Rob and Jack's mother. My aunt was at work, so we were left on our own. We were all old enough to know not to play with fire or open the door to strangers, or pick up the phone, stuff like that. The phone rang a couple of times, stopped, and then started ringing again. We knew it was probably our aunt calling because that was her usual signal. Davy picked up the phone, and Aunt Mary told him she was stuck on a double shift at work, and there was leftover food in the fridge for us. She also warned us again not to play with fire, open the door to anyone, particularly because a local gang was known to be causing trouble in the area. She told us to behave and that she'd see us in the morning. Davy hung up and shared Aunt Mary's message with us. We were all boys, and without any intention to insult anyone, we began acting tough and started saying things like, "Let's see what happens if a gang member dares to come here." Time passed. We played video games, ate until we were full, and then began feeling sleepy. To give you an idea of the layout, my aunt's house was a basement apartment. The living room had 2 windows and a front door. The bathroom was just a few steps away from the living room, and the back of the apartment had 2 bedrooms and a kitchen, which had a back door leading to the yard. Tom and my cousins decided to sleep, and I chose to stay up in the living room to watch a horror movie, Scream. It was around 2 in the morning. About 20 minutes into the movie, I noticed a man's shadow on the curtain, coming down the stairs that led to the front door from outside. I initially thought it was my aunt's boyfriend, Larry, coming home. But then the door handle jiggled, and no one came in. A few seconds later, I saw the same shadow at the window, peering inside. I was petrified. I pretended to keep watching the movie as if I hadn't seen anything. But once the shadowy figure went back up the stairs, I bolted to the back of the house and woke up my brother. Tom woke up annoyed and then said to me, "Dude, what's up?" I told him there was a guy peeking through the living room window and trying to get in through the front door. My brother replied with, "Come on, you're just being paranoid from watching those scary movies." I insisted I wasn't paranoid and that there really was a man outside. But my brother said, "It's probably just Lewis. Go back to bed." I told him Lewis had a key and would have used it if it was him. Just then, we heard a loud bang at the back door, and my brother and cousins jumped out of bed, startled. Cousin Davy asked, "What the heck was that?" I explained what I saw again, and we heard 3 more loud bangs at the back door. We were all scared, but ready to defend ourselves. Cousin Quan grabbed a knife, my brother got a big frying pan, and Cousin Rob took his mom's baseball bat. I grabbed a bottle of bleach, ready to use it if needed. I told Davy to call 911 if the guy banged on the door again. He made the call, and the police were on their way, thankfully not far from us. Suddenly, there were 6 loud bangs at the front door. We were all tense and prepared for the worst. When we were close to the front door, we heard 4 more bangs at the back, and then the electricity went out. We were left in the dark, terrified. After a couple of minutes, the lights came back on and the back door swung open. We screamed and rushed to unlock the front door, running outside. The cops arrived just as we heard sirens approaching. They searched inside and outside but found no one. They contacted my aunt and mom, who rushed over. We all went back to my place, but we were too scared to sleep. My aunt and cousin stayed with us until she found a safer apartment. It was definitely one of the scariest experiences of my life. This all went down last week when I was on the night shift. I was pumped up for my new gig. I met some amazing folks there and even became pals with a girl. Let's call her Lisa. Lisa was really sweet and kind. We quickly became close buddies. I began spending more time with her at work and even outside work. She'd accompany me to my bus stop and often offered to drive me home. She'd ask me over to her place, we'd go shopping, chill at cafes, and even at the mall where we both worked. Life was good, until I started noticing some odd stuff happening at work and at my place, but that's another tale. One day at work, while discussing weekend plans with a colleague, I felt like someone was watching me. I glanced up to see Lisa gazing at me. I didn't make a big deal out of it then. I thought she might be admiring me. But I began to realize that whenever I was chatting with someone else, like a colleague or my boss, Lisa would give me this chilling, icy stare. It felt like she didn't want me interacting with them. She seemed to tail me everywhere, even to the restroom. She would just stand there, staring at me. It was really spooky, but I brushed it off. One day I was late to work and noticed that Lisa's locker was slightly ajar. As I tried to close it, something fell out. It was the scariest thing I had ever seen, and it sent shivers down my spine. Inside her locker was a list of names of all the people I interacted with. It had their names, addresses, and workplaces. On the flip side of the paper were specific dates and times beside each name. Without wasting a moment, I showed this to my boss. We both agreed that those dates and times could signify some sort of dangerous plan for these people, so the boss dialed the cops. The next thing I saw was Lisa being led away in cuffs. It's frightening to think that had I not been late that day, I wouldn't have found that paper, and things could have escalated into something worse, perhaps even fatal. I hope Lisa gets the help she clearly needs. It was 1971, and I had a job at a dessert kiosk in an amusement park called Sunset Adventureland in New Jersey. I was only 14 then. After finishing my shift, I decided to hop on a couple of rides before heading home. Usually, due to my age, I worked till 6 p.m., but that day was different. The kiosk was short on staff, so they asked me to do the evening shift. Finally, at 10 p.m., my shift ended and it was time for some thrill. I walked towards the Crazy Rat roller coaster and saw a teenager hanging around, but I didn't pay much attention. After enjoying the ride, I left the park and started my less than 10 blocks walk home. At that time, my neighborhood was considered safe, and walking home alone wasn't a concern. But this time, it was different. As I walked down the trail on Lane Street, I heard what seemed like footsteps behind me. I glanced over my shoulder but saw no one. I kept walking, but the sound of the footsteps getting closer kept haunting me. This time, when I turned around, I spotted the same teenager from the park following me. I quickened my pace, but so did he. Fear kicked in, and I started to run as fast as I could. Soon I was just a block away from home, but he was still right behind me, gaining on me. As I got closer to my apartment, I started yelling, "Dad, help me!" Now, the truth is, I was raised by a single mom. There was no dad, but in that moment, I was ready to try anything to shake him off. I looked back one more time, only to see him run off in the opposite direction. But something shiny in his hand caught my eye. To this day, I have no clue what it was, and frankly, I don't want to know. I'm just thankful I got home unharmed.